Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here um, this morning and for giving us the opportunity to share some of the things that could help you in creating a positive work environment. So, without much ado, let me just get on with my presentation. For today's workshop, or rather my talk, we will focus on basically just three main points. So for my presentation, given the allotted time, I'd like to focus on equipment, ergonomics, and stress management. Because after all, this is the kind of situation that is prevailing right now in this uh, pandemic situation that we're all undergoing. What makes working from home demanding? Well, the current situation has imposed this as a de facto choice. Wala tayong choice dito na naabutan natin ito dahil sa nangyayari ngayon sa panahon dito sa buong mundo. We are undergoing this pandemic due to COVID, and so we have no choice. And what has happened is we've had to adapt to this type of situation. And because many institutions, many corporations, many groups were not prepared for this, there has been this challenge. And some of these challenge would be, well, the lack of face-to-face supervision. Whereas in a live situation, we see our coworkers were able to, get over and discuss things. This time, we have to do it offline. We have to do it virtually. So there is a lack of face-to-face supervision. And that leads to a lot of other challenges. And one of these would be managers worry that employees will not work as hard or as efficiently. As Stephen Covey would say, the speed of trust in his book, The Speed of Trust. If there is that low level of trust, then certainly there is that feeling of uneasiness when there is lack of visual control. When in reality, if you look at it, when we're in the offices, we're not actually under 24 or 8 hours total visual control. Our managers are not hovering over our shoulders and looking over what we're doing. Rather, this kind of challenge, which is a trust issue, stems from the fact that it's unfamiliar. The other kind of challenge that comes with this type of situation is that employees feel that their managers are out of touch with their needs. Obviously, things are done remotely, and this creates that kind of feeling with employees. Uh, when we also look at the other challenges that come from working from home, the lack of access to information. Whereas before you could easily walk to your co-employee's desk or to the office of your boss and obtain the information. Well, right now we're limited to doing phone calls, text messaging, or video calls. So while technology is around to help facilitate communication, certainly there is a big difference with just being able to walk over to your co-employee and be able to chat with them, whether formally or informally, and find out what you need. Um, Emails, text messages, chats, they don't readily convey emotions. No? Unlike a face-to-face interaction, we can take visual cues from how a person is reacting to our messages, how the person is reacting to what we're trying to say or what we're asking. There is a lack of these visual cues that are not totally captured even on a video-based type of communication. And that leads to social isolation and loneliness, no? And the feeling that people are disengaged. There is a lack of interest, so to speak. Disengaged employees could be defined as those who don't enjoy their work. And as a result, they just put up the bare minimum of effort in order to accomplish things. So this low level of disengagement is something of concern to many institutions because there is no sense of ownership anymore that is developed with the department or with the unit or with the institution. In other words, walang pakialam na. No? Ang pakialam lang ng mga tao nangyayari sa iba is ako lang, ano ang nangyayari sa akin. So nagiging self-centered ang ating mundo. Okay. The other challenges that come with working from home would be the distractions, no? The distractions from uh, working in your home environment. Why? Because, well, obviously the home is generally not geared towards a work type of environment. We're not geared as a workplace. Kaya nga home eh. It's a residence, no? Work is separate from home, so to speak. When we were in the previous normal, because now uh, homes have become de facto workplaces. Well, and if you look at it, homes are designed to be for home activities, and offices are designed for work activities. So the ergonomics are very different. And, that was driven home in, if I believe, yesterday's news. In New Zealand, the Prime Minister was delivering a message to the nation regarding the latest COVID outbreak in New Zealand. And while she was delivering her talk, to the country, and it was being broadcast live across the country, her little toddler walks into the back and says, "Mommy, I want to go. I want to sleep." And something like she wants a bedtime story. So obviously, you can see how work from home and home activities clash or collide with each other. So where do we find the balance towards this type of environment? How do we cope with these kinds of situations whereby home activities now become interspersed with our own work activities? And part of the result of that is sometimes the blurring of the work lines start to occur because you are connected. We are allowed to be, we are using technology to connect with each other. What happens is that, well, you're on call. You could receive a text message, you could receive an email, or you could get a request via chat, Viber, for instance, asking you to go online so that you could have a meeting or a discussion. So there is that blurring now of when does work stop. Whereas before, there was a hard stop, so to speak, pagdating ng 5:30 or 5 o'clock, whichever the case may be for many of us, because at that point in time, we psychologically switch off because we're going home. And when we get home, yes, it is possible for managers, for supervisors to get in touch with us, but it was more of not necessarily the norm. No? It was more the exception rather than the norm. But now, what happens is that there's that blurring as far as where does work stop and where does my home life begin. So certainly, these are some of the challenges that come from working from home. Uh, so how do we deal with these challenges? How do we function effectively as far as these challenges are concerned? Well, the first thing we need to do is to establish a structure. Aristotle said something like, "We are what we repeatedly do in our lives." So there is a certain rhythm in the way we do things. And when we define a structure, as a noun, a structure is the arrangement of and relations between parts and elements of something. So we try to arrange things so they make sense. From defining it as a verb, a structure is something that is a construct or an arrangement according to a plan to give a pattern of organization. So very critical in this time when we are at home that we try to establish a form of structure to make meaning or to create a sense of meaning into what we are doing and what is happening in our lives today. And that kind of structure will help also redefine where our work life begins and where our home life or personal life begins. So, what are some of these structures that can help you? First is establish a functional work area. A functional work area will need a equipment and we have to arrange it into a certain pattern that is effective for all of us. So we are creatures of habit, and establishing a set pattern of behavior plays a key role in the development of emotions, memories, and pattern recognition. As they say, familiarity creates a certain comfort zone, and the distress that we feel in this type of situation of this pandemic is the distress comes from the unknown, not knowing how to deal with something. No? So, familiarity is one way where we could try to make sense of all of this chaotic situation that is happening around us. And that leads also to a structure of producing a productive work structure, or a productive work schedule. And when we say a productive work schedule, just like you have a work schedule going to the office and working in the office, we will now to try to adapt that kind of structure when you are working outside of the office in your own homes. The second way of dealing with working from home and the challenges that go with it is the effective utilization of video technology and audio technology, obviously. Um, Certainly, technology is there to help us. And this is the time right now where advances in technology allow us to connect with one another, even if we are physically located away from each other. And the third is I'd like also to talk a little bit about how we can deal with the psychosocial effects of working from home. And one of the things that has been effective and proven to be effective is the use of mindfulness techniques to manage stress and anxiety that you may be feeling in this type of situation. Mindfulness has come about, and if you look at, for instance, your Apple device, you will find under the health uh, application, a portion that says mindfulness minutes. So right now we are actually, and scientifically it's been proven that spending time doing mindful activities will help establish a balance, no, in our life. I'll talk about a little bit of mindfulness later on. So let's move on then to uh, ergonomics. When we say ergonomics, we talk about optimizing your work area, and it's creating a zone where you're able to be effective in your new environment. And that means having the right set of tools, to be effective and efficient with your work. So let's talk about the basic equipment that you need in order to be effective in working from home. Just a disclaimer, no, I am I the next the next slide that I will be sharing is equipment or application software that I use, no, as a consumer, and it's from a personal standpoint. So whatever I share here does not necessarily is I'm endorsing it from the point of being a user, not because I have anything to do with these companies. Of course, you're free not to use it and use anything else. I'm using this and I found it effective, and if it works for you, then certainly that would be great. But this is just an example of some of the solutions that you could utilize as far as equipment is concerned. You know, during the start of the pandemic, there was a big rush for people to buy cameras, webcams, microphones, headphones, that kind of thing. And there was a shortage. Lazada, Shopee, and all of these online suppliers, no, all of a sudden were out of stock because people started to rush over and buy this equipment. And I realized you could save a lot of money by just repurposing your old phones. For instance, I'm sure somewhere in your home, you've upgraded your phones and you've probably gave away. If not gave away, your old phones may just be lying around unused. Sayang naman. So you may have an old iPhone, you may have an old Android phone that is just lying there unused. Well, you can repurpose your phones and use them as webcams, because first and foremost, these phones are very powerful, because these phones are actually equipped with wonderful cameras. Right now, when we travel, people no longer bring these huge, bulky cameras because they have a camera on their hands, which is their phone. And the phone takes wonderful pictures. The lenses are fantastic. It's all automatic. It takes wonderful video. So it's the same thing as a webcam. In fact, your phone is also equipped with a microphone. So you could repurpose your phone as a webcam, and instead of spending money buying an expensive dedicated webcam, then why not just repurpose your phone and use it as your webcam? And what I've done is I use Epocam. You can download this. There is an iOS version, an Apple version, and I think an Android version. I've also used DroidCam, which is available in Android phones, and they also have an there's also an iOS application for it. What you do is you download the application into your phone, and then you also download the application from their website. They'll give instructions into your computer for the drivers. So if you're a PC, Windows-based PC, you download the drivers for Windows. And if you're an Apple user, you download the drivers for a MacBook. And you install that into your system. And then you run your phones. There are instructions on how you can do this. And your phones, voila, become your webcam. Just like what I'm using right now. I'm using an old iPhone 6 because I've upgraded my phone. And now it's found a new purpose in life, and it's serving me well. I didn't have to spend for my webcam. Now, you might say, well, my computer has its own built-in camera. Great. It certainly does. There are some computers that may not have it. So here is an option for you without spending too much money. But there is also a downside towards using the webcam, the built-in camera and microphone in your computer. And we'll talk a little bit about that later when we. So being able to see is an important dimension, of reconnecting with people. After all, we're physically, away from each other. So being able to see each other helps ease the isolation that we may be feeling. Now, the other downside to using your built-in cameras is these are not as high quality or high resolution compared to the high resolution that your mobile phone is capable of using or providing. So you can download these these are free apps, by the way. The downside to using the free apps is there are ads that come across the page, and sometimes lately I've heard that with some of these two apps, the ads start marching across the screen. So you may be on a call and there's this ad that is marching across your screen, across your camera. You can do away with that by getting the paid version. I got the paid version. So for a minimal amount of investment, I'm happy with what I have as far as being able to communicate and allow people to see me quite well. As far as the resolution of my camera is concerned. So we talked about the visual dimension of minimizing isolation. What about audio? Oh, this is an important dimension. Consider using a separate microphone. Why should you consider using a separate microphone? Like I said, the microphones built into your laptops may not be as high resolution. And if there's one thing that you can sacrifice video, but certainly you cannot sacrifice audio. Now, look back in the early years. I'm sure maraming dito kabatch ko sa edad, no? So let's look back at the early years, no? When we didn't have video-based communication. How did we communicate? It was all via audio. Lahat telepono, party line, pakibaba ng telepono ginagamit ko, no? The young people, the millennials right now, hindi nila alam what the party line means and anong ibig sabihin na makipag-away ka sa party line. But for those of us who live through this kind of period, no? Telebabad, no? Staying on the phone, talking to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or your loved ones, no? We could say hours and hours on the phone, and we get into fights with our party line because you're staying on the phone for so long, no? So it's all audio based. Wala tayong visual at that time. So it's critical that you can hear and understand the person at the other end. And that is what it means with using a good microphone. And there are lots of low cost choices, no? You can go to these online shops, no, which sell providers, no, for these types of equipment. You could consider a integrated setup, which means you have a earphones with an integrated microphone, like as you can see in the graphics here on my slide, no? Or you could have, as you can see also in the graphics in my slide, a separate microphone. No? In my case, I don't feel comfortable using a headset with a built-in microphone. One, I find it cumbersome to have something into my ears. No, whether it's the plug-in straight into my ear, or the cup type of headphones. No, and it feels hot. No, it messes up my hair and all that. So I'm not comfortable with it. So I'd like a certain degree of freedom, a sense of normality. I look normal without my headphones and my headset, what have you. So I prefer to have a separate microphone like I'm using right now. It's a separate microphone. It's mounted on a small boom or stand, which allows me the freedom to talk with you this way, no? Without this thing protruding across my mouth while I'm talking. Because again, I'd like to have a semblance of normality in what I'm doing. Things are not normal as it is. I don't want to add into it. Well, there are advantages to using a headset with an incorporated speaker and microphone because one, it allows a certain degree of confidentiality. In my case right now, I am using also my TV set as an additional monitor. So I've extended the display of my laptop into my TV. So I have practically a second monitor, no? And I'm also using the speakers from my TV set, no, for the audio. So there's an advantage to using a headset with a built-in microphone. There's a certain level of confidentiality because only you can hear what is being said by the other party. Of course, if someone was listening in to your conversation, they would hear only one side, which is what you are saying, but they wouldn't hear what the other side is saying. So there is a certain degree of confidentiality. Um, the disadvantage, of course, would aside from the comfort level, is that well, when you're on a headset, it disconnects you from your surroundings at home. And if you're like me, you'd like to be able to be monitoring what's going around the house, etc. I don't want to have something that would disconnect me from what's happening around me. For those of you who are mommies, all right, you'd like to be able to monitor if your baby starts crying, no? Kung naka-headset, if you're wearing a headset, you won't be able to hear that your baby is crying or your child is crying or needs help or fell down or what have you, no? Or, God forbid, an emergency occurs in your home, biglang merong sumigaw na sunog or whatever, and you're not able to hear because you're on your headphones. No? So there is that disadvantage also that comes with working with dedicated headsets, no, with built-in microphones. Let's talk about then the ergonomics, as I mentioned, no, in using the right set of equipment. Uh, proper positioning of equipment. If you are using your equipment, in a particular manner where it leads you to adopt a wrong posture, and you do this for long hours, because right now we do things virtually, so you sit on your chair and you have a wrong posture, that can lead to a lot of body aches and pains, no? So ideally, no, the monitor should not be higher than your eye level. Why is that? No? Having the monitor higher than the level of your eye leads you to tilt your head up. All right. So if it's higher than your eye level and your monitor is above, the eye level, that leads you to start tilting your head up, and this causes neck strain. And if you look at the average weight of the human head, the average weight of your head is around 5 kilograms. That's 11 pounds. All right. That's balance your head weighing 11 pounds, 5 kilograms. All right. Is balanced on just 7 vertebrae on your neck and supported by around 20 muscles. So what happens is, if your monitor is too high, you're tilting it, you're creating a lot of pressure around that area. Too low, and if your monitor is positioned lower than your eye level, what happens is you're also causing strain on your neck, on your shoulders, and also on your back, because you're hunched, trying to see what is on your screen. So ideally, again, position the monitor so that it is not higher than your eye level, and then consider using a chair that supports your neck, your shoulder, and your back. All right. Or the other solution is you consider purchasing a adjustable height table. If, let's say, you cannot adjust the height of the monitor, well, one way of adjusting the height of the monitor is, stacking maybe, I don't know, books, or maybe wood, so that you can put the monitor on top of that. You can buy also all these things, no, online, which allows you to mount your monitor by raising it higher, no, by either attaching it to this monitor mount, which allows you to raise or lower the monitor, or just putting it on top of this block that you can buy online so that it's higher. The other solution, of course, a bit more expensive, is to purchase a table that allows you to adjust the height, no? And these tables can be available electronically. You press a button, the table moves up. You press another button, the table can move down. So that allows you to adjust the height of your screen, of your laptop, etc. So and it helps manage the ergonomics as far as your body is concerned. There is a manual version where you use a crank to move it up and down, or you use something that is electronic, costs a bit more, where you just press a button, it's plugged into your outlet, and the motor raises the table up or down. So the point being is that look for a position that makes it comfortable for you to spend a long time being able to communicate with people, being able to interact with people virtually. All right. Uh, Maintain a correct sitting or standing position. One of the advantages of having an adjustable table, which I just mentioned, is spending long hours sitting on a chair can be a lot of discomfort, no, especially on your bottom. So one solution, of course, is you stand up, but you get out of focus of your camera when you stand up, unless you have an adjustable table which allows you to stand up and take the weight off of your bottom. So uh, take a look at those options, no, as far as maybe making life easier for you, as far as maintaining a correct sitting or a standing position. By the way, the ideal distance, no, for your monitor should be around 45 to 78 centimeters. That's 18 to 24 inches, no, from your eyes, from your head, no, to the monitor level. So Again, take a look at the options around where you could purchase, or you can ask someone to make you one, an adjustable a table that allows its height to be adjustable. Ah, lighting, very important. Beware of glare. It rhymes, no? Excessive glare from other light sources can affect the resolution of your screen, and creates additional strain to your eyes. What happens is, if the glare is excessive, it waters down the resolution of your screen. Mas mahirap siya makita. So you end up exerting more effort trying to figure out what you are seeing on the screen. And one solution for this is, well, find out first. This is how you check for the glare level. Okay, to detect the reflective glare, if that is happening, no, or you're experiencing that, no, look at your screen right now, and then look for a book or a piece of paper or a folder, all right, and try to block the light. Position the folder above your head in such a manner as it blocks the light and allows you to see your screen. If that happens, if by moving the folder around you're able to achieve a position whereby your screen looks better, then that means glare is your problem and it's coming from that direction. So reflections can become a problem when there is excessive glare. So this is how you can detect the reflective glare and where it's coming from. So you might consider moving your position so that you are able to minimize the amount of glare coming from a particular light source. So obviously, we want to avoid light sources directly hitting our eyes. No, so if you look at the graphics here on my screen, a light source ideally should be just above your head. Okay, it doesn't reflect directly onto your screen. It allows you to see your keyboard very clearly. Now the other graphics, all right, will show where light sources may have a negative effect as far as your eyes are concerned. So if it is positioned in these directions, as you can see in the graphics, then the reflective light hitting your eyes, no, can cause discomfort, as far as working efficiently is concerned. Again, we're trying to be more efficient. We're trying to find a way in which we can be more effective where we are from, given the circumstances. Yes. We spend long hours in working with our mouse, this little thing here. This has been the cause of what you call the carpal tunnel syndrome. So that's pain in your wrists, in your fingers, etc. Funny, because my daughter was complaining the other day. Sabi niya, Papa, my finger hurts. O sabi ko, why? And I figured it's because she's online and she's clicking on all of these things. It turns out, aside from the classes that she's been attending virtually, the other reason why her fingers hurt is because of these games. No, they're using these game controllers and masakit yung thumb kasi kakapindot. No, again, this is a situation which illustrates that prolonged positioning of your body parts can result in pain, and that can happen with your wrist. No, if the prolonged position of your wrist in trying to manipulate your mouse, if it's done for long hours, then it can result in pain. And there are some ways in which you can alleviate this. You can rest your wrists by shaking them, all right? Allow blood to circulate again through your wrist. The other is to use certain exercises to make your wrist more flexible. Let me show you some of these exercises. One exercise, I'll just move a little bit back, is you get your hand twist it around so that the thumb is pointing forward, all right? Position the other thumb and push against the hand, and then move your elbow up so it forms, like a letter L with your wrist, and then pump it up and down, pushing at the same time with your other hand, pushing with your thumb towards the elbow. That creates a certain level of flexibility. For those of you who are in the martial arts, no, this is an exercise they use in Aikido. And in Japan, for instance, where there are a lot of people who are engaged in the martial arts, I would see people there in the trains, and they would be doing this. No? So it tells me that they're probably Aikido practitioners. No? So they would be doing this. Another way of exercising your wrist is you reverse it like this. Okay, so you have an L shape like this. Grasp the wrist, put your thumb here, push towards your chin this way, maintaining this, at a horizontal level. That's another way to exercise your wrist. Here is another exercise for you. Your fingers, grasp, pull backward, hold for 5 seconds. Now, again, caution. When you do these exercises, do it slowly. Hindi yan nakukuha sa biglaan, no? Especially if you're someone who's not physically engaged in activities. Otherwise, you'll end up injuring your wrist. So don't force it. Just try little things, little steps. Maybe tomorrow, increase the amount of pressure. Maybe in a week or time, maybe more pressure. The idea is to build up your strength and build up the flexibility of your wrist. So this is another exercise. This is another exercise, all right? You can do it with both hands so that you balance it out. Here is another exercise. Again, letter L, pointing forward. Push, push, push towards you. Push the wrist towards you. So here are practical ways in which you can strengthen your wrist and minimize carpal tunnel syndrome. Shake after every time you finish one of these exercises. Shake, allow the blood to flow, all right? Just loosely shake your wrist, okay? So practical ways in which you can help maintain a certain level of physical fitness as far as your wrists are concerned. All right. Let's talk about optimizing your working zone. Okay. How do we optimize our working zone? Okay. Well, when we talk about optimizing our working zone, we're talking of separation. Okay. And what is separation? That is creating a space in your home environment, which you can identify as the area where this is work. So we want to associate a particular area as your work area. Why do we do this? As we mentioned, all right, we are creatures of comfort. Take a look at how you do things in the office, all right? You have a designated work area. So psychologically, when you arrive in the office and you are seated in your work area, psychologically and unconsciously, our brain clicks. Working time, because this is a work zone. This is my office. Our brain is not attuned towards that kind of mindset when we're at home, because it associates home with rest, recreation, all right? And so sleep. So when you have, if you can, I know there are limits to this, because certainly not all homes may have the requisite area or space for this, but try to designate a particular area where you always go through that area, because that is where you'll get work done. And as much as possible, if it is possible, all right, don't use your bed as your work area, because you'd like to separate that your bed is for resting, for sleeping, and work is in another area. Otherwise, all right, uh, when you might develop insomnia because your brain now associates that your bed is also work area and may not click off, so to speak. So designate an area which you can separate from resting in your personal life. For you, when I'm seated here in front of this particular desk in this particular part of the house, this is work. Okay. Isolation. Isolation is the area that insulates us from interruption. If possible, uh, trying to find an area which would minimize interruption. I know, again, there are limits to this because not all homes may have the requisite area for this. In my case, I have two work. I've designated two work areas. One is my room because it's convenient for me to work from my own bedroom, for example. But I have a desk, and my desk is separate. So I associate work when I sit here in front of my desk. This is work area, and I can close the door. And by doing so, and I can give instructions to the house help. If there are any phone calls, unless it's an emergency, it's a life or death situation, whatever, don't disturb me. I'm here. I'm working. So I'm creating that form of isolation, an area which insulates me from interruption. And so if they need to get in touch with me, then they would have to knock on the door. So, at least that gives me a semblance of certain degree of normality, just like when I would be in the office. If something is happening in the house, they would get in touch with me through the phone, right? Because I am physically far away from my home when I'm in the office. So isolation is an area that insulates us from interruption. Now let's talk about work, establishing a productive work schedule. Um, Consider your cycle of routine when you go off to work. When you go off to work in the old normal, you'd wake up, you would brush your teeth, wash your face, take a bath, go for your breakfast, and then at a certain time, because you want to avoid the traffic, you would be moving out of the house so that you arrive at a certain time into the office, and then you log in or what have you, uh, switch on your laptop, log into the system and all that. So there is a certain level of routine. There is a schedule of sorts that we keep. So to try to establish a sense of normality in what we are doing, consider creating a time structure. And you could have this discussion with your boss so that you could agree that from 8 o'clock to 9 a.m., this is a sample schedule, all right? This is the time that we can talk with each other, we can check with each other, we can touch base on our deliverables and what have you. And then in my case, for example, I set time aside, 1 hour to answer all of my emails. So I let people know that this is my schedule. So if we want to discuss, etc., let's take the first hour in the morning for discussions because everyone is fresh. Our perspectives are fresh. So we'll have our daily check-in, team meeting, or what have you, 8 to 9. Pagdating ng alas 9 hanggang alas 10, 1 hour, I devote one solid hour answering all my emails. So I tell people to be aware of this so that, they don't disturb me, or they're aware that this is not the time for me, right? The best time to catch me really is 8 o'clock in the morning up to 9. And then I tell people, just like in the office, where we have breaks, we have coffee breaks. So from 10 o'clock to 10:15, be kind to yourself, give yourself a break. Get your bottom off, the weight off your bottom, all right? Stand up, walk over, get a cup of coffee, etc. This might be the time, go on your social media, Facebook, whatever, touch base, phone calls, personal life, etc. This is the time where I devote, to myself, to give myself a real break, because it is difficult maintaining attention, virtually. And then 10:15 up, is whatever. It could be working on my reports, working on my projects, working on assignments, making necessary phone calls, arranging meetings, etc. So this is just a sample of creating a structure so that people are also playing from the same sheet of music, so to speak. Everyone knows that at this time this is what people are doing, and this is what people are busy with, and so they can more or less time or schedule their activities with you, rather than just barging in anytime, with a phone call, or with a sudden text message, can we meet right now, etc. Because just like in the office, we have schedules. We schedule meetings on where we're supposed to, or the locations of where we're supposed to meet, etc. There is a structure involved. So same thing, create that structure from your home. Now, continuing with establishing a work structure, from home. uh, Try to establish a set of guidelines on how you will communicate, how decisions, or maybe an escalation matrix, no, a decision or escalation matrix. This is a clear process that will allow employees to easily contact supervisors and work associates. So create a guideline, have a discussion with your peers, with your supervisors, and determine the structures for communicating. When should I escalate this? When can I make a decision on this? That's very common also, no, in the financial industry, for example. Let's say in the banking industry, a teller would have um a certain level in which they're allowed, a figure where they're allowed to decide on their own. Anything beyond that, they escalate or they elevate to an officer for a decision. So something similar, no? Create that process. Establish rules of engagement for communication. Uh, and by establishing these guidelines, no, then you try to also establish when we can switch off, so to speak, when work stops, so that I have personal time, and anything that intrudes on my personal time, of course, is more of an exception rather than the norm. So structures, no, rules of engagement are very important, and this must be established together with an agreement of sorts, no, with your team. And this is where you set your expectations for frequency, the means on how you will communicate. No, there are many ways in which we can communicate with each other. Like, for example, your escalation matrix would be for things like these. You can decide on your own. But if it's beyond a particular limit, then you have to CC me in the email. Otherwise, no, you don't have to CC me or include me in the email. But if it is a certain level like this, then maybe don't just include me or CC me in the email. CC also our unit head, our department head, or the boss of our boss, etc. No, so the means also, it be for things like these, decisions like these, a phone call would suffice, or a text message will suffice. All right, and the timing for communicating. No, when should we have our team meetings via Zoom? When can we do team meetings via telecon instead of just Zoom, so that it's easier? When do we just do it via chat? So the timing for communication is also very important. Oh, teleconferences, no? Video. Okay. The brain works harder to process nonverbals. Uh, and why does it work harder to process nonverbals? Well, simply because, one, there are no cues. So there is a dissonance, no, in conflicting feelings, no. The conversations, when they're done virtually, they don't feel natural. When you are, for example, silent in a Zoom call, it feels disconcerting, right? What happened? Did you get disconnected? No. But when we're talking, when having a conversation naturally, silence is a real rhythm, no? It's a natural rhythm in real life conversations. No? The other thing is cameras make us self-conscious. No, is my hair okay? Is my makeup okay? Etc. How do I look? Etc. Is my shirt okay? Is my background showing? Etc. All of these, no, create no certain challenges with working with videos, and obviously the attention span on video calls, no, drops faster compared to face-to-face discussions. No, that's why I always make it a point to remind people when we have, for example, workshops. All right, um, workshops that go beyond 2 3 hours on call are just simply painful, difficult, right? Because the attention span to be on camera is just so difficult. So it's shorter, all right? Because it's not natural. So bear that in mind when you have meetings. Try to keep them short and simple, especially when you're doing it, virtually. I mean, meetings, live meetings, no, already can, if it goes too long, can be, sense of discomfort. What more when it is not a natural type of meeting, when you're doing it virtually? All right. So, how do we optimize videos and telecons? Well, you set the agenda before the call. Uh, you you create the structure again as far as what are the elements that we will be talking about. No, there is nothing more discomforting than going blindly into call and not knowing what's going to happen. So it helps again so that things don't go running off, uh, to be able to set the agenda before that by sending it out maybe a day or so, or maybe an hour or so, okay, so that people are aware of what the focal point of the discussion is, and so that our meetings don't go overboard and don't go over time. Let's try to limit the discussions, all right, towards what is in the agenda instead of jumping out of it, so that we can always say, oh, that's out of the agenda, we can have a separate discussion for that, so you can keep your meeting focused on the matter on hand, and again, limit the amount of time spent. Also, check your system ahead of time, no, for connection issues. For those of you who use Zoom, all right, sometimes you might not be able to connect if your Zoom software is not updated. And if it's not updated, as I found out the hard way, and I was supposed to be the facilitator, my Zoom was not updated. So for some reason, I kept on getting disconnected out, or I could not connect properly, with the rest of the participants. And that's where I realized, oh, I should have updated my Zoom. And of course, updating takes time. So when you click update, you got to wait until your system is able to download, the update, and you're able to install it. So again, check your system, make sure that you're able to connect properly, all right? Uh, Obviously, it's a challenge here. Internet reliability is a challenge. Speed in our internet is something that may be beyond our control. But working with the givens, focus on what you can control. What you can control is your ability to connect, the software you're using to connect, your camera system, your microphone system. And again, going back, if you must sacrifice something as far as communicating virtually is concerned, sacrifice the video, because you need to be heard, all right? It's pointless trying to communicate if they can't hear you and they can just see you, unless, of course, the discussion is supposed to be done in sign language, and that's fine. That works, okay? Um, maybe you might want to consider turning off the camera. Also, this helps manage your bandwidth, no, when you utilize teleconferences, because speed of the internet can be affected. People logging in, a lot of people logging in with all their cameras on, can rob the level of speed, no, the bandwidth. And so it might be helpful that you switch off your cameras and then switch it on only when you're going to speak, no, so that you can maintain that level of normality, so to speak, because when we talk to each other, we want to see at least a face, no, of the person that we're talking with, rather than just a blank screen. There is nothing more discomforting than to be talking to a blank wall. No, in fact, part of the challenge of being a facilitator or for someone running a meeting, like in this particular case, is I don't see who my participants are. I don't know how they are reacting because I don't have any visual cue as far as my are concerned. I don't know how you're reacting to my talk right now. So it's like I'm talking to a blank wall. And I try to keep my energy level up, and imagine that someone is reacting to what I'm saying. No, so again, these are the challenges. No, for those of you who are presenters, for those of you who do facilitation via online, this is the challenge: keeping your energy level up and trying to maintain, as if you have a live audience right in front of you. So again, if for instance bandwidth may be an issue, turn off the camera so that you could maximize your bandwidth. Another way in which maybe you feel self-conscious because of your being on camera all the time is you might consider moving the screen to one side, no? Instead of directly. What I mean by moving the screen, moving your camera a bit off to one side, all right? You can adjust, all right? So that, it doesn't look like it's head on. It could be something like medyo side view or something like that, no? So that you may not feel self-conscious. If that self-consciousness is an issue for you, you might consider doing that. No? Of course, take note of the fact that at the other end of the communication process is the person watching you. And obviously, if you move the camera in a position where, for example, he just sees the top of your head, may not be effective. No? So, bear that in mind when you reposition your camera. No? Baka naman hindi maganda yung magiging view niya. So, consider the fact that, the receiver at the other end will have this type of view if, let's say, you decide to change the camera angle that you have right now. Okay. Again, stick to the agenda and the allotted time. And of course, that is where, if you have a predetermined, well-defined agenda as far as what will be covered, what will be discussed, then it makes things a lot easier as far as maybe, in some meetings, some people start jumping in with off topics or different topics. Paano naman kung ganito, ganyan? Okay, well, that's out of the agenda. Let's take that offline. We'll have a separate meeting for that. Maybe we can plan it for Tuesday. All right. So it's easier to manage the meeting and keep it on track. Having meetings, straight Zoom meetings, one after the other, is just so tiring. Attention span is difficult, doing things virtually. And so it's important, try to transition between calls, no? Consider having, a break in between meetings, no? Mahirap yung ginagawa ng iba. They move from one Zoom meeting to the other. It will just cause a lot of stress on your part. So instead of doing that, try to create space in your life. Life is tough as it is. Let's not try to make it any harder. And this is where I'd like to talk a little bit about stress. No, how do we manage stress? No, during this time in the pandemic, okay, where things are done at home. Well, let's define what is stress. Well, number one, stress is a normal response, not abnormal. We all feel stress, and it's because it's a reaction of the body to a situation or a stimuli in the environment. No? And it could include good stress, eustress, and bad stress, which is called distress. No? So good stress is you're excited about, let's say you're getting married. You're excited about getting married. That's good stress. Or you're excited, you feel stressed. What will I wear? I'm going to see my loved one. Or what will I prepare for dinner? What am I going to cook? That's good stress, all right? Bad stress is when, it causes all of these physiological disorders already, no? And, stress varies from person to person. For some people, they feel, the level of stress is quite high, and it creates all of these negative impact, no, on their body. For some, they can tolerate it. Okay. Examples of people that can tolerate high stress because they're trained for it are soldiers. When they're in battle, cannot imagine the amount of stress because someone's trying to kill you. So they have to be able to tolerate and operate in that kind of environment. So it's bad stress, yet they're able to cope well with it because they have the training for it. What are the signs of stress due to to the pandemic? Well, obviously, the fear or worry about our health. No, will I get infected? That's why there is this thing now. Where every time we interact with one another, at the back of our heads, nagpa-antigen test ba to? What's the latest antigen result of this person? Should I meet with this person? And so on and so forth, because we're fearful about getting infected. There's that fear or worry about the health of our loved ones, especially if they're not been vaccinated. What if they get it? What will I do? Etc. What if someone in my family gets hit by COVID? We get all of these scary stories. No, sometimes I hate opening my Facebook because it feels like I'm reading an obituary. I hear about this or that person close to me passing away or whatever, no? So that creates that fear, no, about our loved ones or people close to us, no? And it leads to changes in our sleeping or eating patterns. We have difficulty sleeping or concentrating, all right? Um, and here is another example of what happens working from home. Your phone starts to ring and and intrudes on work life. Okay, sorry about that. Worsening chronic health problems, no, is another example of how stress uh, can affect us due to this pandemic. No, the increased use of alcohol, tobacco, no, smoking, no, or worse, no, drugs, no, to help us sleep, to help us to cope, no, with the ongoing situation. How do we cope with stress? Well, I talked about mindfulness. No, what is mindfulness? No, mindfulness. The founder or the person most associated with mindfulness is a gentleman named John Kabat-Zinn. You can find his book in Facebook. No, he created in 1979. Kabat-Zinn worked with chronically ill patients who were dying, okay, and who were not responding to traditional treatments, no. And he created an 8-week stress reduction program. He called it MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction. This was in 1979. And since then, no, a lot of research, no, has been mounted to demonstrate how useful mindfulness has been, no, as an intervention to improve both mental and physical health, compared with other psychological interventions. Okay, just as a background, John Kabat-Zinn is a professor emeritus of medicine. He has a PhD in molecular biology. In 1971, he got this from MIT. And this is where he studied under Salvador Luria, who is a Nobel laureate, no, in the field of medicine. So John Kabat-Zinn, no, is not just an ordinary person, but certainly a well-known scientist, no, as far as the field is concerned. No? And for John Kabat-Zinn, he defined mindfulness as an awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose. Okay, um, in the present moment, and not being judgmental about your reality. So the focal point for John Kabat-Zinn is the here and now, because a lot of anxiety comes about. Excuse me. a lot of anxiety comes about because we start worrying about what may happen in the future, etc. So practicing mindfulness, no, involves, some of the methodologies, which is a lot of it involves breathing and meditation. Okay, and by focusing on our breathing, Kabat-Zinn has pointed out, and research has validated this, that we can reduce stress. Okay, and you will find a lot of these apps, no, on your phone. No, so you can find mindfulness apps in your iPhone and in your Android. No, and as I mentioned, we actually measure the number of minutes, no, in our mindfulness. It's actually used by the US military. Stress management breathing technique in mindfulness is used by the Navy SEALs, no? The elite unit in the United States. No? Just to show how elite they are, 40,000 will apply, only 6% will qualify. And the SEALs use a technique called box breathing. Now, box breathing essentially talks about using a breathing technique where you can imagine a box and you breathe, inhale for 5 seconds as you go up the box, hold your breath for 5 seconds as you go horizontally across the box, and then exhale for 5 seconds as you go down the box. Okay, and box breathing, all right, when repeated, helps reduce stress, no, and helps you manage stress. You could find also in YouTube and in the internet, no, mindful breathing. No, there are 3-minute mindfulness exercises. I suggest you take a look and research. You can find a lot of these, no, and help you get involved in the proper breathing technique to manage your stress. There are a lot of mobile apps, no, for self-care, no, and mindfulness apps are available all over. I'm showing some of the examples that you can find, no, just by looking at the internet and looking at the iOS or your Android stores. No? A lot of them are free. So, uh, in summary, let's enjoy the small wins. No, what are some takeaways from working from home? Little to practically no traffic. Being at home during bad weather conditions, no? Sometimes a break in routine can be invigorating. Doing out of the ordinary, doing something ordinary can be invigorating. And bear in mind, systems are starting to become more flexible. Telemedicine is being moved forward quickly in many departments. We've seen already vaccines develop, and of course, these new cures that are being developed. So we are developing the necessary protocols to manage the pandemics. No, so certainly with these advances, life will become bearable. I am confident in that. So thank you very much for spending time with me, and I do hope you learned a little something from this presentation.